Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Bohurt. This is the show where we talk about Bohurt a lot because it's great. And this week on the show we have Joe Booth and Steph Kiddle, and we're here to talk about the sort of Cygnus and the women's side of the sport and how that's all going. So I obviously know you two very well, but for those at home, if you just introduce yourselves and what you've done, where you've been. So Joe, yourself.
I'm Big Joe Booth. I'm one of the fighters in SoC Cygnus. I've been the captain of the team for 2 years. I'm also the vice president of HMBGB, which is our national organisation, and I fight in the Bohurt League team Isca. So that's me.
And yourself, Steph?
So I'm Steph, SoC Cygnus as well, obviously. I'm also a female rep in HMB UK, is it? Great Britain? I can't remember.
GB.
But I'm female rep for HMB. I've been fighting since 2017, Battle of the Nations, pretty much. Won a couple of medals here and there. Lost a couple of fights here and there. You know, I've done a good rounder. It's pretty much me.
All right, happy days. So how's Cygnus been dealing with the whole lockdown situation we've had here for the past year or whatever it's been and continuing to go on? How's the team adapted with that?
We've done loads of different stuff over lockdown to try and keep, mostly it's just trying to keep the team together and connected. We had a lot of new fighters that just started training and getting involved before lockdown, so it was a really crucial point for them, and they're all still on board. So that's involved like online group trainings, online socials as well, just making sure that we're keeping in touch and checking in with people. And then because we've done all that, a lot of new fighters have gone and bought weapons and training equipment that they've started using at home. Okay. So something like more real and sort of physical to do with. Then otherwise, that might be me, sorry. We've been doing a lot of reflecting as well on obviously tournaments and things that we're missing out on, again, to like keep you connected. Why are we here? Why do we love this sport? And and sharing that with our new fighters, so they've got something to look forward to.
Okay, cool. So it's been a few prongs to the fork, as it were, for keeping them involved. So you've got a lot of new fighters that you've tried to keep interested with that, but obviously for the more seasoned amongst it, what are you doing about preparation for Battle of the Nations? Now, obviously we've got a location, and that's kind of galvanised the country again into remembering that we actually do stuff every now and then. So has that brought any changes about for you? Any preparations in store for that?
I mean, Steph started the preparations on a more of like a worldwide level with the women's reps. So I mean, from a sort of Cygnus point of view, it is now our end goal. We don't, before that we were trying to push sort of like big national events and promotions, and we were trying to talk, decide where we would go next abroad. And with the increase in lockdowns, that just keeps going out the window. So now we've got this Battle of the Nations goal that we are incredibly hopeful that by next summer, when that comes around, we'll be able to travel, even with restrictions. So that's our big goal. Preparations wise, we've just started sort of coming together as a national front, because the women, we don't, for the World Championships, we all come together and make group decisions. We don't have club by club decisions, because the amount of women that want to come. So we are planning to start some online trainings for larger battles, hoping that we're going to get a 12 versus 12 category, and we're encouraging, like the local captains are encouraging as many women to fight at Battle of the Nations as possible. So that's one of the main things. Otherwise, we're doing a lot of administration to get fighters to come, because we've got like these new fighters want to come, and the issue is that their first tournament potentially abroad is going to be Battle of the Nations, where there's this big step up in terms of professionalism and skill. So it's a very hard, it's a hard bridge to gap. But
yeah, so it's a big problem across the board is that we've got a date for Battle of the Nations and nothing between now and then to cut our teeth on. Even the veteran fighters, we're all a bit rusty. But a few points came up there that lead me on, like probably more pertinent to you, Steph, with the female rep status of we've had the announcement now there's going to be an all versus all, and the pro fight categories have been brought in for you. So you've got a lightweight and heavyweight now. Some of that's quite overdue, I think. What are you hoping to push forward from there and get involved with next? Like you mentioned, 12 versus 12s. I was hoping for something like that this year. I thought that the last all versus all would have had enough of that, but what's the timeline or planning for that now?
Yeah, I mean, we would still really love for Battle of the Nations to do 12 versus 12, because I think logistically and tactically it's a lot easier to deal with 12 versus 12 than an all versus all. You got very different tactics going forward, and teams have fought 12 versus 12 in past tournaments within the last, well, before lockdown, within that year. Whereas all versus all is very difficult to coordinate.
Yeah, it's a bit amorphous, isn't it? It's no one's being depended on to make it happen. It's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it, compared to your team getting into an event?
Yeah, and in past Battle of the Nations, they would sort of just drop, okay, women's all versus all will be like last thing on the cards, last day. And by that time, you'll have dropouts due to injury, armor failure, and just from exhaustion. And I've fought my 5 versus 5 categories, so now I'm done. And so that just that made solidifying all versus all at Battle of the Nations for next year quite difficult, because obviously the powers that be, Battle of the Nations, they only see the end result. And they don't necessarily understand everything that leads up to that. So there was a lot of negotiating on how we could make fighters more accountable so that they would show up if they signed up for all versus all, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's just it. As I was saying before, it's like you're not tied into your team. So you get to the end of the tournament, you've had your hammerings, you've been beaten up a bit, you're feeling tired, it's nearly time to go home. Do you want to go get involved with the all versus all? Well, me and the other person on my team that's still standing, now let's just go home. We've got a 30-hour drive ahead of us. Let's go. As opposed to an actual event with team rosters and medals at the end of it and a bit of prestige, rather than just a bit of all versus all at the end. Like, I stopped doing all versus all at the end of tournaments years ago because I just didn't see a point in it. But when I make it 12 versus 12, or whatever versus whatever, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think sorry. I was just going to say, like, last point on Battle of Nations with the 12 versus 12, it'll help. I think that is the next step professionally for the women's side of HMB, because like you say, you can get the roster on, you can get the gold, silver, bronze, and it won't just be 3 teams in the whole of that category, and then everyone gets a medal. It'll be everyone actually fighting for it, like with the 5 versus 5s.
Yeah, cool. What about with the pro fight categories? Are you happy that you're obviously happy that that's been split now, because that's how it should be? But is 2 enough at the moment, do you think? If it went, was it divided any further, would there be not enough fights, or is it all right as 2 categories in a minute?
I mean,
I think 2 categories is what we need right now. I think we could have done with that last year. You split it up to 3 categories for a tournament that's happening after lockdown. I think we are going to see a reduced number of female fighters and male fighters at Battle of the Nations potentially because of this. So yeah, I think that with 2 weight categories, you're going to get enough. You're going to get a full set of fighters. We've got plenty of time in advance now. Before we were told that pro fights were being introduced, a lot of people hadn't trained for them. I know I hadn't, because I was focusing on Bohurt and dueling that year. So yeah, 2 categories I think is enough. There can be sort of like 30, 35 kilograms between women in the lower end of the weight scale. And
it's a lot, isn't it?
It is. Well, it doesn't make for a very good looking fight,
No.
to be honest, because you've got two very different skill sets going on. And I'm not saying necessarily that weightier fighters always win, but they definitely fight differently, and perhaps not. It's not a good combination. I don't think it looks as effective or as exciting. So, and it's about professionalism. And you know, again, we're moving towards that. So that's really important. And it's how the men do it for a reason. And
there is a reason it exists in every professional sport.
Really saying, yeah, to mirror other professional sports. Otherwise, it's just going to take longer and longer for people to see the sport and the women's side of the sport as a sport officially and professionally.
Yeah.
I just you know, about the mass battles. I think you were saying about not wanting to fight for someone. You know, not wanting to fight when it's just like an open category. Hopefully, we'll still get the 12 versus 12 or 10 versus 10 this year, and it's not going to be an official category, which I think is fine. Again, if we've got less women, we had 60 women show up last year for what was essentially an all versus all, which is amazing. We're possibly not going to get that. So if we have these smaller ones, like you said, I think being accountable to a captain and making alliances, I think there's something very medieval about that. You know, making alliances with different countries and like international relations, and the guys do it in the 30s, and I think that's a really strong part of the sport, which is unique to our sport. As far as I'm aware, you don't get those kinds of like alliances and relationships with other sports. So yeah, I think that would be great. Even if we need to do that for the 12s, it makes you accountable to your captain or to somebody. Yeah.
Okay, so women's events in general, do you feel like they're handled properly by tournaments and organisers? Like you said, sometimes the mass battle just getting bolted onto the end. Do you feel like the women's events are handled correctly in where they're placed in events and things like that?
I mean, I've not had as recent experience at tournament as Joe has, but from what I can gather, I think it's getting there. It's getting better than when we first started. Because when we first started, obviously our women's skill level was a lot lower. There are a lot less women fighters, so we would be an afterthought to the men's when we first. And then in 2017, 2018, we saw a good incline both in skill and numbers of female fighters. And with that, we brought a demand to get better set up at tournaments to firstly encourage more females to join up with HMB, but also it was a matter of respect, the way I see it. And we've been somewhat fighting for and earning respect as this journey has gone along.
Yeah, I completely agree. But I think when you say like at tournaments in general, I think there's a huge divide. I've been to some tournaments that have been absolutely appalling to the point where you won't go back to that tournament, and you know you felt like giving up on the sport. And then I've been to some tournaments which are the complete opposite, where I've had organisers asking me right up until the day, what categories do you want? How many fighters are there? When do the women want to fight? I guess because it doesn't take as long, and they appreciate that we do things like support the men's teams as well, and there's less of us. Interestingly, my first tournament abroad was in Auvergne at Saint-Germain, and there was I felt like there was complete equality in the organisation of the women's and the men's, despite the massive disparity in skill. I don't want to be awful, but if I was fighting on a team, which I was, then I was awful. I was absolutely awful. But they had all the same dual categories for the men and the women, with all the same amount of marshals. They had we had our 3v3s at a good time in the day. Sometimes we're left to like fight in the dark for women, which is ridiculous. And they even had pro fights for anyone that wanted them. It was an unknown category for women completely. They had all of these elements, and that was back in 2017. So it's really, it can depend on where you go. I've had a lot more positive, constant sort of positive experiences since. There's still some small things that people don't think about, not getting women's fights covered on live streams and things like that, which I think, again, we need the equal opportunities. There's no reason why in this day and age women shouldn't get the equal opportunities and the skill level. That's happened at tournaments that I've been to. Well, a tournament that I've been to in Russia, which is a shame, because what you would have on that live stream is incredibly skilled fights from women. It's not just about the equal opportunities. They're missing out on some great footage there, because some of those fighters are incredibly experienced, incredibly skilled. So it is getting better, but we get different.
Still a way to go.
Yeah, a little bit.
So with that in mind, the sport's got a very macho sort of image and atmosphere, I suppose, and that can be off-putting to some of the women that are looking to join or have just joined, have got into it. Is there anything, do you think, that can or needs to or perhaps should change about the atmosphere, the culture of the sport to encourage more women in? On the flip side of that, what should incoming women expect in that sort of way?
I think part of the reason why we ended up forming our own club and not just sort of moving and becoming affiliated with another men's club was that we wanted to create a unique atmosphere for women. And one of the main things I talk about a lot is about feeling safe, which sounds ridiculous in contrast to the sport that we do, because we're hitting each other with steel things. But it's about feeling comfortable to be yourself. You know, women come in just as many different varieties as men. We're not all masculine. We're not all particularly feminine. And anyone from any background should want to join. There was honestly that in some areas there's sort of like a sexualization of women, which we wanted to come away from. And I'm not saying that, I think people think that sort of Cygnus are quite sassy, and we do a lot of social media, but it's on our own terms, and that's what's important about having like a female-based environment. You get to be yourself under no sort of auspices of what other people's ideals of you should be. And also I've done a bit of research on masculinity in martial arts for women, and about whether masculine sort of women with masculine personality traits end up in martial arts sports, or if we develop them once we come into these male dominated sports to kind of fit in. And there's no clear answer to that, but I just think it's really interesting. And I think it's interesting that you can be both. And one of the great things is about women in HMB is that a lot of them, about if you maintain being yourself and you are feminine and you bring something new to the sport, you don't have to be masculine to do a competitive fighting sport. We train our women in a way that brings them on, when they're ready. They don't have to come in and be aggressive and sort of throw their weight around. They will in the end. It's something that you can sort of grow and learn towards.
Yeah, I think just adding on to that, let my mind catch up with me a second. I think one of the important things about what we did in the UK with SoC Cygnus and creating a space just for females is you'd get it down the gym, say, as well, which is why you have female only gyms or times at gyms sometimes, where you come into something that you don't know. You're learning new skill sets, which can be very scary for some people, and it's usually scary more so for females just because of the way our minds think and we're worried, oh, if I don't get it right straight away, then people are going to judge me, and then you start going to a negative thought trail, which is terrible. So coming into an all-female space, you don't feel as much pressure, because we, as sources of Cygnus as well, whenever someone new's come in, like, we've always been really on point with that. It's like, don't worry about getting it right straight away, just you need to practice it, and we talk them through it, you know, and I feel like we are always very open and very friendly and very approachable in that manner. Whereas sometimes just having a male there, like, because of past experiences or anything like that, you know, some people can think they're judging me, or I'm scared to try and do this because I might look stupid in front of that guy there, and they're just worried about that thought. So I think that's why having a space where you don't, you know, new female fighters don't have to go to an all-female place. Like, they're very welcome in other clubs, mixed clubs. That's
sure.
absolutely fine. But they have that opportunity or option to go all-female and just feel a bit more comfortable until they get more knowledgeable in what they're doing, and then they might be comfortable to transfer somewhere mixed.
Yeah, there's we've had fighters come in who've done training with guys before, and have had really bad experiences, not because these are bad guys or anything, but there's a difference in, we're made differently biologically, physiologically, there's differences, and they have been hurt, and it set them back, or it's made them leave the sport, and they've actually re-entered the sport through Swords of Cygnus, knowing that they're going to not be in a position where they have to fight against guys, and it's not just about fighting against guys. We have some fantastic trainers and fighters in the UK who we compete against, not competitively, but in a training sense, who obviously know how to bring on new fighters no matter what gender they are. But there is a machoism which does cause issues, you know, where they can't possibly lose to a girl. That has happened. Then, and you know, they're isolated incidences, but they actually leave quite a mark.
This will, of course, tend to be worse with newer people when they're first thrown in as well, because with any sort of experience, you've got to learn that nobody wins in training. So but again, there are mental things that cause those problems. And like cross-gender training has its problems, but it can be done well. But it's like you guys having your own space to develop into a situation where you're comfortable to do that and figure out who you feel safe doing it with is important. Like, it will go both ways as well. Like, some blokes will feel embarrassed getting beaten up in front of a girl. Some blokes won't like that. Some women just do not want to fight a bloke twice their size.
Some guys won't fight women as well, and you know, and that's fine. I think it's about everyone consenting to the situation. This is what we're doing on the weekend for fun. This isn't this isn't your job. You're supposed to. You have to enjoy every bit of it. That's what's really important for me. Also, I think there's an aspect of instinct for a lot of women. I'm not going to say everyone, but we don't instinctively fight blokes because we don't win. And unfortunately, a lot of women have had situations, very personal situations, and they've brought that up when we've been training together, that, you know, we're taught to flee these situations. So when you're being attacked, which is part of our sport, you start to develop bad habits of fighting defensively against. When you're constantly training against men, you constantly fight defensively. You fight in a way where you won't get hurt. You sort of like shield yourself too much, thinking that the strike is going to be painful, and, you know, possibly in a women's fight you wouldn't bother. You focus on the attack, you don't become aggressive and you don't attack. And, you know, sometimes attack is the best form of defense, and attacking and being aggressive is what will make you win. So there's actual tactical side as well that women miss out on if they. And
on the flip side of that, you can get it when blokes just won't commit to training and they feel like you're made out of glass, and that has the opposite effect. It's a careful scale to balance, I find, but this is why places like yours are important, where you can be developed in such a way that we can find those things out when it's important. So are there any other sort of barriers that you feel that need to be overcome to get the sport to where you want it to be for this day and age? Anything in place, whether it be admin wise on the field or anything else?
I think there's a lot that we've already overcome. One big thing is armour for women. That has changed massively. The first few bits of armour that I ordered, even though I sent off my measurements and things like that, like the helmets were too heavy. I had a lot of problems with neck pain, and I just didn't, we don't have as developed shoulders and traps and things. I didn't need a helmet that heavy. I didn't need, my armour was sort of like not shaped to me. Gauntlets are very heavy, and it sounds like we just want an easier life, but again, physiologically we're made differently. A lot of women are coming into the sport and wearing men's armour, which I think is another big issue. It's an issue from the side that they don't have their own armour. It's a very expensive sport, and I understand that, but it's another issue because it doesn't fit, and it makes a massive difference to how the sport looks and how you fight and how comfortable you are when you fight. If you try and do an entire competition in like basically uncomfortable clothes, then like you're not going to perform your best. And we do have very long days sat around in armour. So the women's side of the sport is it needs to catch up with that. And I think we are in the UK. You can almost completely now the women in the UK have their own suits of armour, and it sounds really basic and straightforward, but I think it's really important.
I know what you mean, because for a long time, you used to be able to tell a men's fight from a women's fight because of the proportions. And the women's fights, they look like bobbleheads because they were wearing blokes' helmets that were huge on them. And you see them, they're like small bodies with a massive head, and you're like, that's a women's fight, I can tell. But it does make a massive difference. Like anyone that's worn Bohurt armour to putting on actual armour made for them to their measurements, it is a huge difference. But we see things like with the changing of the pro fight weapon rules, women have got a different numbering for their weapons. Yeah, that's it, the points ratio. So things do have to change in that way, and that's happening. So you said you've had a lot of recruitment in the past year, or just before lockdown, you had a lot of recruits come in and go. What factors do you think have allowed you to grow so much recently?
I think it was kind of like the fan base that we've built up, and it's still word of mouth. So even though we use social media, instead of constantly requesting recruits and trying to hunt people down, you've just got to let people come to you. They'll hear about it through word of mouth. The more videos, the more content that you put up, the more people see it visually, and then they relay that onto their friends, and then someone goes, you know what, I've seen this thing, you'll really love it. And that's when we've got people actually contacting us that we haven't seen before. And I still think it's word of mouth. I don't think it's just the social media, but the more of a fan base we get, which people think isn't as important. I think people just want recruits. But if you have a fan base and the knowledge of the sport increases in the population, then that's how you get people coming in. And then with Swords of Cygnus, we kind of always make sure that as HMB grows in the UK, Swords of Cygnus as a bit of a brand is at the front of that, because it gives them somewhere to go. And we're very open. We try to disseminate as much information as we can about the sport. I've signposted, 10, 15, 20 people making inquiries to different clubs in the UK. It's not about just us, it's just getting people into the sport. And so I think that's what's made a difference, really.
Yeah. I think just to add on to that, there is an element of if you build it, they will come sort of a thing going on. One of the foundation of Swords of Cygnus started off with me, Joe and Sophie, and we would record all of our training, constantly be taking snaps during training or after training, all of that. And I think it's our commitment people will see that, and if this is the sort of sport that they're interested in, they will feed off of our commitment. And I hate using motivation as a thing, because motivation is so fickle, and really you need self-discipline. But you know, seeing girls constantly training, and I've seen it a lot with a couple of foreign female teams now, like they're all over their social media, and they just like constantly posting training videos and stuff, and it's fantastic to see. And that just like, it does feed your motivation, and you're like, you know what, I want to be a part of that. And because once again, sort of Cygnus is an all-female thing, and I don't think we're too daunting for people to approach us. Like it seems more reachable for average Joe, because I mean, I came into this sport, I saw well, Barney, I saw you getting you know, knocked about by the mountain, pretty much.
Yeah, it was a bad day.
But and you know, that was back when there was almost no females in it, but I just saw this like clatter of metal and fighting, and I was just like, oh, this is it, this I found my life calling. But other people, it's going to be different. And yeah, from our commitment and constant level of social media that seems reachable, people can be like, you know what, this is doable, I can do this, and then they make the inquiry, and it's a lot easier. So I think consistency of training, and as much as you can, for a little bit of advice for different clubs, consistency of showing people of your training, and it doesn't have to look flashy. In fact, if it doesn't look flashy, it's probably better, because it's more natural.
That's the thing. Everyone, I think a lot of people are afraid to put their trainings or whatever on social media, because most training is really boring to look at. The more exciting something is, the more boring its training is. Like, I can't figure out why someone would want to see me hit a tire for 10 minutes. You know, and I think we fall into the trap of, that looks really boring, or I haven't done this perfectly, so I can't put it on the internet, otherwise I'll be criticized by random people for the next 6 years.
Oh yeah, that one.
I mean, that is a side effect.
Yeah.
You will get criticized.
Yeah, it happens. Have you got any
It
other
happens for everything.
you got any other advice for the other clubs around the UK for how to manage their social media, or what are they doing wrong, do you think? Because SoC Cygnus is known to be a bit of a social media juggernaut, compared to a lot of the other teams.
Yeah, we've had to learn a lot. I was basically given up on social media personally before we had SoC Cygnus. And the initial drives that we made was about promotion. And you get onto this quite, if you're not educated in social media like me, you kind of you get told that you know, if you pay for promotion, that you'll get more followers and stuff. So, you know, we learn and we got advice from people. We know it's absolutely not the way to go. You have to just be true to your club, your team, and make it real, like Steph said, make it attainable. And we do some really honest pieces. So we do lots of things that are very positive. So everything is really about positivity. We celebrate the fighters that we already have. So when people think, you know, oh, I might do this sport, and that could be me one day, that could be me, you know, being, you know, hailed for all the hard work that they've done and the commitment that they've made. And I could be the one in the photograph in that really cool set of armor, which just seems to be a big thing for the women. Bit of a contention with me, but anyway, it does look good. I mean, it does. So aesthetically, it's fascinating, and that helps. But yeah, I think it's all about positivity, training, talking about not always being perfect. We used to do a series of blogs, and now we kind of do quite long posts about just what's going on. The fact that some days are incredibly physically challenging, some days are mentally challenging. Sometimes we haven't done anything for a week, and that's the honesty of, you know, the period that we're in right now. And yeah, I have had quite a few teams ask us what we do with the social media and how far we go with it. But I think just honesty. And I think, like you said, it can look boring, like hitting a pel over and over again. But I still get excited watching women do that from other bits of the sport. So, it's still interesting for people that have never picked up a sword. Yeah, that's still pretty cool. So, and also if you use your social media to kind of celebrate yourself, then I think that's encouraging to a lot of people. Stop worrying so much about what people want to see or what people think of you. Do what you love. And the people that want to get on board with that will. So you've got to make it more about just an open, like an honest approach, and something that's really genuine, because people can tell when it's not.
Yeah, it's fairly obvious.
The other important thing is, like with YouTube, say as well, you have to think of, why are you posting? Why are you trying to get a following? And really it has to be, you're not posting to get a massive following, to do this, that and the other. You're posting because you want to post, because you want to share the sport, and then the following will follow. It will take a long time to build up your own fan base, and that's fine. Again, consistency and honesty. Just like, do it because you want to share the things that you love, not because you want to get big and massive on Instagram, on YouTube, because that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, you're never going to get famous for doing a podcast on a mega fucking niche sport. Oh yeah.
I mean, we use it as a motivator as well. So like, we have group chats and it's like, let me know how many miles you've done today. I don't care if you've walked 500 yards or if you've jogged like 10 miles around, a park, whatever it is, just tell me. And then I'm going to put it on the social media. Together, we're going to, this is one thing we did, like, how many miles can we get done in a week? Like, and together we're going to do this bit by bit. And it doesn't matter. And it's an important part of your training schedule as well in the time of a lockdown. If I was like, right, I want every single person doing X amount of burpees this many times a week, some people are just going to be like, yeah, see ya.
Yeah, I totally did those burpees whilst not doing the burpees.
Oh yeah, I did them. Oh, I didn't turn my camera on.
I didn't feel like being on camera. I'm just going to sit here and huff.
I haven't done a burpee in ages.
No, I don't like
It's the truth. It's the truth. So I'm not going to start preaching something that I've not done myself. I've done other things, but everyone's at different stages in the lockdown, different stages in their training. So yeah, just celebrate everyone's personal little goals at a time like this.
Brilliant. So you do all this social media. So like you say, you've got a lot of recruits coming and everything. So you must have seen a lot come and a lot go. What do you think are the biggest mistakes people come into the sport with, like new recruits, whether it's in their expectations or things that they do or anything? What do you think are the biggest mistakes people make on the way in?
I think a couple of big ones people get wrong are they underestimate how expensive it is, even just to train without getting armor, because you need decent soft kit, which isn't cheap to get good decent one, but it will last you. So it's a financial investment, and it's hard work, commitment on the fitness side, which a lot of people like, because they see the swords, they see the armor, shiny, this looks really cool, I would love to do that. And it's a strain on your body, especially if you've never done anything like that before. And it's gonna take a long time. Again, consistency and time. Like, it takes time to be able to move fluidly in your armor with all that weight in different places that you've never felt it before, holding this big hunk of metal, making it look good. And you're not going to look good for a while if you've just started as well. So yeah, you just have to understand, like with any fitness thing, that it's going to take some time to get good at it, and it is going to be a little bit of a financial sinkhole, as it were, but it's worth it, because I will say this on it, like I said, just just now. This is the sport of my life. Like, it's my life's calling, I feel. Even though I've been out of the game, you know, due to having twins for a little while. It's killing me. But you don't just go into the sport, you go into a community, you make a Bohurt family, as it were.
Oh yeah.
And like, you two personally, like, are some of my best mates in this sport and in my life.
Careful now, you're going to set me off.
Yeah, I thought we said we weren't going to cry.
That's all right.
But as stupid as it sounds, yes, it is expensive. It takes a lot of time and effort, but it really is worth it, because one day you too could be pinned to a list getting hit by 3 blokes with axes. It sounds stupid, but it really is worth it. It's
the meaning of life, I think.
Totally.
So, yeah, I think people massively underestimate the sport side. It is really hard work. It is physically incredibly demanding. And if you make that a part of your life, then that's fantastic. I didn't do sports before doing this, so it's been a huge undertaking. And I think one of the things that new people, if they leave straight away, it's because they have some incredibly high expectations and they're not willing to wait and put the time in to reach those goals. Because even when you thought you were doing quite good, like, I would see a video of me when I thought I'd got a bit stronger, I could, you know, lift a little bit of a heavier weight at the gym, and then I saw a video of me and it still looked like I was walking through custard in armor, and it was so slow. And then finally, you know, 3 years down the line, I watched a video, because I hate watching videos of myself. I put one video on and I was like, oh wow, like, I actually moved fairly quickly for 30 seconds there. I'm impressed, you know. So just don't put your expectations ever, but people put themselves down because it's much harder than they think, and you've just got to persevere with it. It is about perseverance. It's a long sport, it's a long day, but it's so rewarding, because, like I say, it's not a community. It's not just you're in a team, you're in a squad, you have your club behind you, but you're also, you know, we've got friends now around the world.
There's something I think is quite unique with the sport, is how friendly the different teams and clubs are with each other off of the field. Like, you spend 10 minutes trying to turn each other into dust, then you get out and you're just mates again. I think it's really unique.
Before you leave any event, you have to have like a sort of like a goodbye period of about 2 hours.
Schedule that in, and
by the time you get round everyone, it kind of starts again. So, like, oh, I thought you'd gone already, and it's like, well, yeah, no, I'm just trying to.
I'm trying to
leave.
And
you miss the ferry. It's a nightmare.
So you touched on there is that disconnect you have between what you think you're doing in armor and what is actually going on the outside. And I've always thought that's a great phenomenon, because you're in your armor, like, yeah, I hit him and he fell over, then I run over there really quick and he was straight on his ass, and then you see the footage and you're actually just stroking someone's back with your falchion, looking exhausted, and someone else has put them down, and then you drag yourself over to the other side of the list and they fall over their own feet, and you just go, oh, you know, oh, well, sounded better in my head. It does take a long time to get into those places, and I think that is something that's not seen by people when they come in, because unlike a lot of other combat sports, we've got a bit more of a romantic image, because it's swords and heroes and stuff, and oh wow, it's romantic, whatever. But at the end of the day, we are just filling each other in still. There's just a bit of metal in between it. Yeah, so you mentioned your friends all around the world now, and you fight with a Russian team, isn't it? Quite often, and we've all been around the circuit a bit. What differences do you see between foreign clubs and foreign tournaments, and the way things are handled back here at home? And what do you think we need to change to be more in line with that? And what do you think mistakes they're making we've got to avoid?
I think from the tournaments perspective, we in the UK just need more tournaments. It's something that was on our agenda, maybe because the sport's a little bit newer to this country than it is to others. It was on our agenda for this year, and sadly,
lockdown.
It's done. Yeah, lockdown.
Yeah, everyone's agenda's a little bit behind this year, isn't it?
Yeah. So we're going in the right direction with that, and we'll pick it back up. And I think that the onus on that is for every club. We might have a national organisation, but really the best way it's going to be organised is by each club sort of doing it from the ground up, because in each club you've got like a knowledge of the area or whichever location, you've got your local resources, and you've got your experienced fighters who know what tournaments need. We've got enough experienced fighters in the UK that know how to build up a tournament from the ground up and what to prioritise first. And then with that, we've now got the support of like the Bohurt League, which gives you regulations and standards for marshalling the amount of fighters, and how to collect points. So that being all unified is much better, because sometimes you go to tournaments abroad and you think you've got a certain place and you haven't, because the rules are different depending on what continent you're. It was quite bizarre. I think I wouldn't like to say anyone does anything badly, because we have travelled a lot, partly because we didn't get the opportunities in the UK to compete. So we looked to other countries in Europe and beyond for tournaments, and they do them well out of experience. One thing we don't do very well is that we don't have a marshals community.
No, we got nothing, have we?
We need more marshals, and we tried to take that on club by club, but I'm finding it impossible to recruit marshals. I don't know about other people, but probably because I don't have a marshal, I can't tell them what they should or shouldn't enjoy or do, or I've never been in that position. I couldn't be a marshal. Sorry, this is off topic. I've seen in the Russian tournaments, if we're keeping it about the women, fighting the fives, fighting the pro fights, and then marshal the men's fives, the men's 12s, and counting the duels. How does anyone? Marshalling is it's time consuming, it's exhausting. They're on their feet constantly.
It's a thankless job as well at times.
Yeah, it's thankless, and they have to be on the ball because they're avoiding people getting injured. It's when people are on the ground and things when they become so much more at risk. And so just massive commendation, I think.
The thing with marshals is, with like a lot of really important thankless jobs, you only ever notice a marshal if they fail. Like no one steps away and goes, "What brilliant marshals! They've called everything right. They're great." You only ever hear, "Fucking marshal didn't do this for this fucking 0.5 of a second during the entire 12-hour day. What an absolute bastard!"
They don't have time to eat because the fight's overrun. So massive commendation to them. And if anyone watching this wants to try marshalling, do it, because we need you. We need you. We'll get you presents.
I think we'll have a better time of it in 5 odd years, where the current generation of fighters start to retire and still want to be involved with the sport. Like I want to play now, so we need marshals. I'm not saying we need to go out and start kneecapping people, but so that's us nearly wound up there. But for a last question, something I like to ask people is, what's a little luxury you need to take with you to a tournament to make life just easier? Like for me, it's things like flip-flops. It's just for walking about the tournament ground. It's a lot easier and getting changed and everything. What little luxuries get you through?
Don't want to say. I'm known for being, I think, a bit of a diva.
Yeah.
So, so having a well-prepared squire is probably my favourite luxury. Because then they can get you all those essentials. I'm not sure I would have got very far without Barney. Definitely the first half to 3/4 of my Bohurt career.
Yeah, I did a lot of admin.
The fact that at some point in the last year and a bit I went to a tournament on my own on a flight is just would have been unfathomable.
I nearly turned to stone when I heard that. I didn't know what was going to happen.
But otherwise, I would say it's very British, but a cup of tea. You go around Europe and I'm sorry, but the tea's awful. It's awful. And if any squire can bring me a cup of tea, any fan, anyone comes to me with a cup of tea at any point during the tournament, You'll be like my best friend for life. She is life. That's all I need.
How about yourself, Steph?
I don't know, actually. I would definitely agree on the cup of tea, though. That's a lifesaver, especially when you're all sweaty and greasy and horrible from fighting. Good cuppers, so good.
Well, wets making equipment in general is when you get out to in the middle of a field and there's no like water boiler or anything, you're like, oh no. What am I going to do?
But anything other than that, I'd just say, a decent amount of jerky, because I get hangry really easily, and a big off can of WD-40 and I'm sorted.
Is that the help the jerky go down?
WD-40, yeah. I forgot about that, so I haven't cleaned my own armour in so long.
It's all right, your squire will sort it out for you, it's fine.
Shed it like a snake and wait for it to get back into the box itself.
Just shake it off and then walk away.
Oh, brilliant. Right, is there anything else you want to put out there to the people listening at home?
Actually, on that point,
actually,
like, it's all well and good me saying like, oh yeah, people do stuff for me, but I think there's a massive, it is a massive issue with women that can't, it's just going to sound awful, but organise themselves at a tournament, because if you're in a position where you can't effectively put on your helmet, you don't know what to do with your weapons if they don't pass the checks, all these little things. If you don't know how to deal with all those issues at a competition, you just start to become incredibly anxious, and that anxiety builds up and you are not ready. You're not psychologically ready to fight. And there seems to be a difference with the organisation of men and women, but I think guys, say you've got like a 30s battle and you've got maybe 10 people doing support. So actually, unless it's something that's broken, the guys have to fix it themselves, put it on themselves. They have to be dressed. They have to have their weapons. They have to have everything. And they have to work independently. And then in gratitude, on the flip side, the 8 women go to the list and there's 30 blokes trying to support them. And we don't actually develop the skills to independently prepare. And therefore, as soon as you get a situation where the guys fights back straight onto the women's and you're not there to help carry, to help manage, then you end up with a bit of a situation. So it's not about, I'm not saying like that women generally are bad at admin, but I think it's really important from a psychological standpoint. If you don't know how to fix your armor on, and you go into the list and you're not confident that your helmet's on, or you're not confident that something's attached or something's broken, you've not been able to sort that out yourself, you'll go down. You've got a massive barrier in front of you. You're worried about your helmet coming off, and you won't tolerate the intensity of the fight. So I will just put that on the end there.
Brilliant. Right then, well, thank you very much, ladies, for your opinion and your expertise there, and getting what you know out there. And for all you listening at home, thank you very much. Like and subscribe, and we'll be back in about a week's sort of time. Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks, Barney.
Bye.
Bye.